Silence in the grand synod of the Kael'thas hegemony was not merely the absence of sound. It was a physical weight, a crushing pressure that seemed to squeeze the very air from the lungs of the 300 delegates gathered beneath the crystalline dome. Above them, through the vast expanse of the transparency field, the violet nebula of the Kyrian expanse swirled in lazy, indifferent patterns, a cosmic bruise upon the face of the galaxy that cared nothing for the extinction event unfolding within its borders. High Counselor Vrax, his chitinous carapace dull with the gray sheen of advanced age and prolonged stress, gripped the edge of the obsidian podium until his talons threatened to fracture the volcanic glass. He looked out at the assembly, at the rows of tiered seating where the representatives of a dozen subjugated and allied species sat in various states of terror and resignation. The holographic tactical map in the center of the chamber, a sphere of shimmering blue light, was currently stained with encroaching tendrils of angry red, the trajectory of the scourge, the insectoid biomechanical swarm that had consumed 7 systems in as many cycles. There was no longer any debate to be had, no political maneuvering to exploit, no treaties to renegotiate. The scourge did not negotiate. It consumed. It repurposed. It grew. And it was less than 3 standard rotations from the hegemony's throne world of Kael. Vrax cleared his throat, a wet, clicking sound that echoed with terrifying clarity in the hushed hall. He knew that the words he was about to speak would be etched into the histories of his people, assuming there were any historians left to write them. He was about to invoke the unthinkable. He was about to summon the monsters to kill the demons. "The fleet," Vrax began, his voice trembling with a vibration that rattled his throat sacs, "is broken. The 7th Armada has ceased transmitting. The blockade at the Antares Gate has fallen. We have exhausted our munitions, our reserves, and our prayers." He paused, letting the grim reality settle over the delegates like a shroud. A murmur of despair rippled through the chamber, a collective exhalation of hope dying. To his left, General Kalen, the supreme commander of the hegemony's military forces, stood rigid, his 4 arms crossed over his chest, his eyes fixed on the floor. Kalen had been the strongest advocate for conventional warfare, for the belief that Kael'thas' plasma and discipline could hold back the tide. He had been wrong. "There remains," Vrax continued, his voice dropping to a whisper that was amplified by the acoustics of the dome, "one option. One treaty signed in the dawn of our expansion, buried in the archives of the precursors, forgotten by all but the keepers of the deep lore, the Pact of Silence." The name of the treaty caused a visible flinch among the older delegates. The Pact of Silence was a myth to the common citizenry, a ghost story told to frighten larvae into obedience. It spoke of a species from the outer rim, a race of hairless bipeds from a high-gravity death world who had mastered the art of destruction so thoroughly that they had terrified the galaxy into isolationism. Humanity, the species that had not been conquered but had simply stopped. They had withdrawn, sealing their borders, promising to return only if the galaxy faced a threat that threatened the structure of existence itself. "You cannot mean to summon them," Kalen hissed, breaking his silence, though he did not look up. "They are a fable, Vrax, a nightmare from the dark epic, and even if they exist, even if they answer, what price will they extract? The legends say they do not fight for territory or resources, they fight for absolutes." Vrax turned his gaze to the general, seeing the fear behind the warrior's bluster. "We have no price left to pay, Kalen. We are already bankrupt of survival. If they consume us after they save us, then we merely trade one extinction for another. But perhaps they remember honor." Vrax reached into the podium, his clawed hand trembling as he withdrew a heavy, rectangular object made of a matte black metal that seemed to absorb the light around it. It was the beacon. It was simple, unadorned, and terrifyingly cold to the touch. It had no buttons, no interface, only a single biometric depression for a DNA sample. "The scourge will be in orbit within 20 hours, Vrax declared, his voice gaining a sudden, desperate strength. "I will not die waiting for the end. I will die screaming for salvation." Before any protest could be mounted, before the shouts of the opposition could drown him out, Vrax sliced his palm with a ceremonial dagger and pressed his bleeding hand onto the black metal. The device did not beep. It did not flash. It simply hummed, a low, resonant frequency that vibrated the teeth of every being in the hall, a sound that felt like the planet itself was groaning. And then it sent a pulse. A single tachyon-burst signal that pierced the dimensional veil and shot out into the void, traveling faster than light, faster than thought, aimed at the coordinates of a dead sector known only as Sol. The waiting was the worst part. The hours bled away, marked only by the encroaching red tide on the holographic map. The Scourge Vanguard had entered the system. Long-range sensors picked up the distortion of their warp wakes, 1,000 tears in the fabric of space as the bioships decelerated. The Kael'tha's defense grid, a pitiful remnant of its former glory, powered up its orbital cannons, a gesture of defiance that everyone knew was futile. Vrax remained in the chamber, watching the display, the beacon sitting silent on the podium. Had it worked? Had anyone heard? Or was the Pact of Dust truly just a myth, a lie they told themselves to pretend they weren't alone in the dark? "They are not coming," Kalen said softly, standing by the viewport as the first flashes of weapon fire began to twinkle in the upper atmosphere. "It was a foolish hope, High Counselor. We should be at our posts. We should die with weapons in our hands, not waiting for ghosts." Vrax slumped, the weight of his failure crushing him. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, you are right. Prepare the evacuation shuttles for the Heritage Archives. Save what history we can." But just as Kalen turned to leave, the station's sensor officer, a young female named Lyra, let out a strangled cry. "High Counselor, anomaly detected. Sector 90, directly in the path of the Scourge fleet." "Is it a Scourge reinforcement?" Kalen barked, rushing to the tactical display. "No," Lyra stammered, her fingers flying across the holographic interface, her eyes wide with disbelief. The energy readings are off the scale. It's not biological. It's not plasma. It's gravity, massive gravitational displacement. Something is exiting hyperspace, but not through a standard window. It's tearing its way through." The main view screen flickered, the image stabilizing to show the quadrant where the Scourge vanguard was massing. Space itself seemed to be boiling. The stars in the background warped and lensed, stretching into streaks of light as a massive singularity formed. It wasn't a wormhole, it was a wound. And from that wound, something emerged. It did not glide out with the grace of Kael'tha's ships, nor did it burst forth with the organic chaos of the Scourge. It shoved its way into reality, displacement waves shattering the nearby asteroids. It was a ship. But to call it a ship felt like an insult to the magnitude of its presence. It was a monolith of dark gray plasteel and scarred armor, a brutalist slab of engineering that abandoned all aesthetics for pure, unadulterated function. It was shaped like a jagged spearhead, miles long, its hull pitted with the scars of 1,000 battles, scorched by cosmic radiation, and covered in antenna arrays that looked like thorns. It bore no lights, no glowing engines, no heraldry. It was a dead thing drifting in the void. "Size comparison," Kalen whispered, his voice dry. It is larger than the Citadel," Lyra replied, her voice trembling. "Length 12 kilometers, mass undetermined. The sensors can't penetrate the hull armor. It's made of a condensed neutronium alloy, sir. That ship is dense enough to have its own tidal pull." The sheer scale of the vessel silenced the chamber. It hung there, positioned directly between the planet Kael and the advancing Scourge fleet. It did not fire. It did not hail. It simply existed, a mountain of metal in the path of a landslide. "Identify," Vrax commanded, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Is it them? Is it humanity?" Lyra adjusted the frequency scanners. I am detecting a carrier wave, analog, extremely archaic. It's broadcasting on all frequencies, but it's not a message. It's a count." The speakers in the chamber crackled, and a voice emerged. It was not the melodious, harmonic speech of the Kael'thas, nor the chittering of the Scourge. It was a deep, guttural sound, heavy with fatigue and metallic distortion. "This is United Earth Vessel Pale Horse. Impact in 5, 4, 3. "Impact," Kalen shouted. "Impact with what?" 2, 1, the voice cut off. On the screen, the massive human ship did not fire a weapon. Instead, vented gases exploded from its lateral thrusters, not clean ion burns, but dirty chemical fire that looked like ancient rocket propulsion. The ship rotated on its axis, presenting its broadside to the Scourge fleet. And then vents along the hull opened. Not missile tubes, not laser ports, but massive industrial exhaust vents. A cloud of shimmering, silver particulate was ejected into the void, forming a dense fog bank around the ship. "Chaff?" Kalen asked, confused. "They are deploying countermeasures." "No," Lyra breathed, reading the sensor data. "That's not chaff, that's nanites, trillions of them, and they—" "See Tive?" The Scourge fleet, driven by a singular hive-mind hunger, surged forward, firing their bioplasma torrents at the lone human ship. The green energy beams struck the cloud of silver mist and simply vanished. The energy was absorbed, dissipated, eaten. The pale horse remained untouched behind its curtain of dust. "We are being hailed," Lyra announced. "Visual link requested." "Put it on screen," Vrax ordered, straightening his robes. He had summoned the demons, now he had to face them. The main screen flickered, replacing the battle view with the interior of the human vessel. The bridge, if it could be called that, was a stark contrast to the bright, airy command centers of the hegemony. It was a cave of shadows and amber computer terminals. Cables hung from the ceiling like vines. The crew, clad in bulky, pressurized suits that hid their features, moved with purposeful sluggishness in the high gravity. In the center, sitting in a chair that looked more like a throne of command conduits, sat a human. He was old. His face was a map of deep lines and pale scars. One of his eyes was replaced by a red optical sensor that whirred as it focused. He wore no uniform of rank, only a dark, utilitarian flight suit. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had seen the end of the universe and found it boring. "I'm High Counselor Vrax of the Kael'thas Hegemony," Vrax said, trying to project authority. "We invoked the pact, we requested aid." The human stared at him for a long moment, the red eye cycling. When he spoke, his voice was the same deep rumble from the broadcast. "I'm Admiral Vance, we heard the bell, we came." The brevity of the response threw Vrax off balance. You came alone, we expected a fleet, the Scourge. They are legion, they number in the thousands of ships." Vance leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking. "We don't use fleets anymore," he said, his tone devoid of arrogance, stating it as a simple fact of logistics. "Fleets are inefficient. This is the Pale Horse. She is sufficient." Kalen stepped forward, unable to contain his frustration. "Sufficient? A single ship against a biological tide that has consumed sectors. Do you understand the enemy we face, human? They adapt. They swarm. Your primitive projectile weapons and chemical thrusters will not stop them." Vance's human eye, the organic one, shifted to Kalen. It was a cold gray, hard as flint. "We know the Scourge," Vance said softly. "We fought their ancestors in the Andromeda Gulf 3,000 years ago. We know how they feed, we know how they think." He paused, tapping a command into his armrest. "And we are not here to fight them, General. Fighting implies a chance of losing. We are here to sanitize the grid." The ship shuddered around him, a visible vibration on the screen. "However," Vance continued, "the Pale Horse has been in cryo-storage for a millennium. Her reactor core is cold. Her reality anchors are out of alignment. We need time to spin up the Cyclops array. We need you to prepare us." Vrax blinked. "Prepare you mean? Supplies, fuel?" "No," Vance said. "We bring our own fuel. We harvest vacuum energy. What we need is data, pure, unfiltered tactical telemetry of the local space-time curvature, and we need you to clear the line of fire." "Move your planet." Silence reigned in the Synod. "Move our planet?" Vrax asked, aghast. "We cannot move a planet." "Then adjust your orbital rotation," Vance said, checking a monitor. "We need a clear trajectory for the main gun. If Kale is in the shadow, the backwash will shatter your tectonic plates. You have 1 hour before we reach optimal firing temperature. Send us your navigational data, and try to keep the bugs off our hull while we calibrate. Pale Horse out." The screen went black. The shock was absolute. Kalen was the first to recover, his warrior instincts overriding his confusion. "He is insane. He wants us to defend him while he warms up a cold ship, and what weapon shatters tectonic plates from orbit?" "We have no choice," Vrax said, his voice heavy. "We summoned the storm, now we must weather it. Kalen, take the remnants of the fleet, form a defensive perimeter around the human ship, keep the Scourge distracted. Lyra, send them the data. Every bit of stellar cartography we have." The next hour was a blur of chaotic violence. The Kael'thas fleet, a ragtag collection of damaged cruisers and frigates, launched themselves into the void, forming a desperate shield wall around the massive, silent hulk of the Pale Horse. The Scourge, sensing the new threat, diverted their attention from the planet to the anomaly. Bioships, looking like massive, fleshy squids with engines of bone and plasma, swarmed toward the human vessel. Kalen commanded from his flagship, the Starpiercer, shouting orders as his shields flared and buckled under the onslaught. "Hold the line. Do not let them touch the hull. The humans need time." But it was a losing battle. There were many. The Scourge fighters wove through the Kael'thas formation, latching onto the hull of the Pale Horse. "They've breached the perimeter," Kalen screamed over the comms. "They are boarding the human ship. Vrax, tell the human to fire whatever he has. We can't hold them." Inside the Synod, Vrax was watching the telemetry. The Pale Horse was doing nothing. Its energy output was zero. It was a sitting duck. "Admiral Vance," Vrax shouted into the comm channel. "They are on your hull. They are cutting through. You must defend yourself." The response was calm, almost bored. "Let them cut," Vance's voice came back. "The external armor is ablative. It's designed to be eaten. It gives us a chemical analysis of their digestion enzymes, keeps the targeting logic fresh." "You are using your own hull as bait," Vrax cried. "We are losing ships protecting you." "Almost there," Vance muttered, ignoring the panic. "Reality anchors synchronized, spinning up the singularity drive. General Kalen, withdraw your forces to a distance of 50,000 kilometers, immediately." "We can't disengage," Kalen roared. "We are locked in close quarters combat." Disengage, Vance said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming a command that bypassed the ears and vibrated directly in the spine. Or be erased, initiating the wake protocol. Suddenly, the pale horse changed. It didn't light up, it didn't glow. It darkened. The space around the ship began to distort, bending light so intensely that the ship appeared to be sitting at the bottom of a deep well. The stars behind it smeared into circles. The sound, which shouldn't exist in a vacuum, began to bleed through the sensor feeds, a low, grinding thrum like two tectonic plates rubbing together. "Pull back," Kalen ordered, sensing the shift in the very fabric of space. "All ships emergency reverse thrust. Get away from that thing." The Kael'tha's ship scattered, breaking formation and fleeing the immediate vicinity. The scourge, driven by instinct and hunger, did not flee. They swarmed the pale horse, covering its surface in a writhing carpet of biological horror. "Data received," Vance's voice crackled. "Trajectory calculated, safety interlocks disengaged. The pale horse is prepared for battle." "What are you going to do?" Vrax whispered, watching the main screen. "Shoot them." "Shoot them?" Vance chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "No, we don't shoot matter at matter. We weaponize the laws of physics. Watch." On the tactical display, the pale horse did not fire a beam. Instead, the entire front section of the ship, the jagged spearhead, split open. Inside was not a cannon, but a spinning void, a perfect sphere of absolute blackness suspended in a containment field of magnetic lightning. It was a captive black hole, a singularity held in a cage. "Targeting parameters locked," Vance announced. "Releasing the leash." The containment field flickered. For a microsecond, the singularity was exposed to the localized space of the Scourge fleet. It wasn't an explosion. It was an implosion of reality. The gravity well of the singularity grabbed everything within 10,000 kilometers that wasn't anchored by the pale horse's specific frequency dampeners. The Scourge ships didn't break apart. They were spaghettified. Massive biocruisers were stretched into long, thin ribbons of matter, pulled screaming into the maw of the weapon. The swarm that covered the hull of the human ship was instantly ripped away, atomized by the tidal forces. The light from the nearby sun bent and twisted, creating a kaleidoscope of impossible colors. The sheer violence of the event was silent, a pantomime of destruction so absolute it defied comprehension. In 3 seconds, the main body of the Scourge fleet, 10,000 ships, was gone, compressed into a sphere the size of an atom, and then radiated away as Hawking radiation. The pale horse snapped its prow shut, resealing the containment field. The gravity well vanished. Space snapped back into place with a shockwave of distorted spacetime that rocked the Kael'tha's station and sent Kalen's fleet tumbling. The void was empty. No debris, no wreckage, no bodies, just clean, empty space. "Target eliminated," Vance said. "Cooling down the core, that was a warning shot." In the Synod, silence reigned once more, but this was not the silence of fear, it was the silence of religious awe. Vrax stared at the screen, his mind unable to process what he had just witnessed. They hadn't defeated the enemy, they had deleted them. They had edited them out of existence. "Warning shot?" Vrax whispered. You wiped out the fleet. What was that a warning for?" "For the rest of them," Vance replied. "The ones hiding in the nebula, the Hive Queen." The realization hit Vrax cold. The fleet was just the vanguard. The true threat was still out there. We must prepare again," Vrax stammered. "We must rearm you." "No need," Vance said. "We are awake now, but we need to talk. Counselor, face to face, I'm coming over." The shuttle that brought Admiral Vance to the High Synod was as brutal and ugly as his mothership. It slammed onto the landing deck with a heavy thud, disregarding the delicate docking clamps. When the ramp lowered, Vance walked out, flanked by 2 soldiers in power armor that looked like walking tanks. The soldiers carried rifles that were clearly kinetic, railguns, but they hummed with containment fields. Vance himself walked with a cane, though Vrax suspected it was more for show than necessity. The human breathed the station's air without a helmet, his cybernetic eye whirring as he scanned the architecture. Vrax met him at the airlock, flanked by Kalen and a retinue of guards who looked terrified. "Admiral," Vrax bowed, a gesture of deep respect. "You have saved us. The hegemony is in your debt." "Keep your debt," Vance said, his voice echoing in the corridor. "We didn't come for rewards. We came because the signal was sent, and because we hate the Scourge." He looked at Kalen. "You fought well, General, for a conventional force. You bought us the time. That matters." Kalen straightened, his pride partially restored. "Your weapon. It is an abomination," Kalen said, though his tone was one of professional admiration. "You harness a singularity, the risk." "Life is risk," Vance shrugged. We learned that the hard way. Now take me to your war room. We have a queen to hunt. As they walked through the station, the Kael'thas civilians stared at the humans with a mixture of horror and fascination. These were the monsters of the pact. They looked so small, fragile even, soft skin, no carapace, vulnerable eyes. But the way they moved with the predatory confidence of apex hunters made the Kael'thas instinctually recoil. They reached the war room and Vance threw a data chip onto the central table. This is the data the Pale Horse gathered during the engagement. The Scourge isn't invading you, they are running. Running, Vrax asked, confused. From what? From the same thing we are hunting, Vance said. The Scourge are locusts, they eat and move. But they only move this fast when the field behind them is burning. Look at the stellar drift patterns. He pointed to the hologram. The stars in the galactic west are dimming. Something is harvesting stars. A chill went through the room. Harvesting stars? Lyra asked, stepping forward. That's impossible, the energy requirements are trivial if you are a type III civilization, Vance finished. The Scourge are pests. The thing chasing them is the gardener, and it's coming here to prune this sector. Vrax sank into a chair. Then, we are dead, if the Scourge was a threat and they are fleeing something worse. Not dead, Vance said, his human eye crinkling at the corners. You summoned Earth. You didn't just summon a ship. You summoned an ideology. We don't accept the heat death of the universe, and we don't accept gardeners who prune civilizations. He leaned over the table. The Pale Horse is dangerous, yes, but it's not a battleship. It's a mining vessel. We use the singularity to crack planets for resources. We have warships, Counselor, real ones. But they are deep in the void, holding the line at the galactic rim. If you are a mining vessel, Kalen whispered, horror dawning on him, then what is a warship? Vance smiled, and it was a terrifying expression. You don't want to know? Now the Queen is hiding in the nebula. She's coordinating the swarm. If we kill her, the Scourge becomes mindless. They'll scatter. But to get to her, we have to go in. Into the nebula. The ion storms there will strip your shields in minutes. Our hull can take it. But we need a spotter. Our sensors are blinded by the radiation. We need someone who knows the nebula. Someone biological who can sense the distinct psionic signature of the Queen. He looked at Lyra. You. Lyra froze. Me, I am a scientist, not a soldier. I don't need a soldier, Vance said. I have plenty of those. I need a mind. Your people are sensitive to psionic waves, aren't they? That's how you found us. That's how you heard the beacons hum before it even fired. Yes, Vrax admitted. We are psionically active, but to go onto your ship, to go into the nebula. It is the only way, Vance said. We go in, we find the Queen, we drop a gravity anchor on her head, and we end this. Then we deal with the Star Harvester. The preparation for the second assault was different. This time, there was no panic. There was a grim determination. Lyra was outfitted with a human interface suit, a bulky, uncomfortable exoskeleton that allowed her to plug into the Pale Horse's sensor grid. She boarded the human ship with a mixture of terror and curiosity. The interior was even more intimidating in person. The air smelled of ozone and recycled coffee. The gravity was slightly too high. The crew ignored her, focused entirely on their tasks. They spoke a LAN. Gouage of acronyms and math. She was brought to the bridge and strapped into a chair next to Vance. Relax, Vance said, noticing her trembling claws. The ship will protect you. Just close your eyes and listen. Tell me where the screaming is coming from. The Pale Horse detached from the station and turned toward the Violet Nebula. The engines flared, not the dirty chemical rockets this time, but a low, blue pulse of an ion drive. They accelerated smoothly, plunging into the cloud of gas and dust. Immediately, the view screen went white with static. The radiation was intense. Sensors blind, the tactical officer reported. Switching to passive. Lyra, you're up. Lyra closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. The nebula was loud. It roared with the energy of dying stars, but underneath the static she felt it. A cold, slithering presence, a hunger that was ancient and bottomless. There, she pointed, her eyes still closed, her hand trembling. Bearing 215, depth 4,000 kilometers. She is waiting. She knows we're coming, Vance noted. Helm, come to 215, full impulse. Charge the main capacitors, but don't use the singularity drive yet. Too much interference. We'll have to use the railguns. The ship shuddered as it plowed through the dense gas clouds. Suddenly, shapes loomed out of the mist. Scourge guardians, massive armored leviathans that dwelled in the nebula. They rammed the Pale Horse, their chitinous hulls grinding against the human armor. The sound was deafening. Hull integrity at 90%, a crewman shouted. They're trying to board. Repel boarders, Vance ordered calmly. Point defense, free fire. Lyra watched on the internal monitors as the ship's exterior sprouted hundreds of small turrets. They fired kinetic rounds, bullets, at thousands of rounds per minute. The stream of metal shredded the biological attackers. It was brutal, primitive, and incredibly effective. The human way of war, she realized, was about attrition. It was about outlasting the enemy. "We are close," Lyra gasped, clutching her head. "The pressure, she is screaming at me. She is trying to crush my mind." "Filter it," Vance commanded. "Don't listen to the words, just track the source. Stay with me, kid." "I see her," Lyra cried, her eyes snapping open. "Dead ahead, inside the asteroid cluster." The mist parted, revealing a hollowed-out asteroid the size of a moon. And wrapped around it, pulsating with vile light, was the Queen. She was a monstrosity of flesh and tentacles, miles long, her body acting as a living factory for the swarm. She turned her massive, multifaceted eyes toward the pale horse. "Target locked," Vance said. "She's big." "She is charging a psionic blast," Lyra warned. "She will wipe the crew's minds." "Not today," Vance said. He hit a button. "Engage the null field." A low thrum echoed through the ship. Lyra felt her connection to the psychic realm instantly severed. It was like going deaf. The Queen's mental scream hit the ship and dissipated harmlessly against the shield. The humans had technology to block telepathy. They had thought of everything. "We are in range for the anchor," the weapons officer said. "Do it," Vance said. "Drop it." The pale horse launched a single, solid projectile from its belly. It was a tungsten rod, 20 meters long, accelerated to a fraction of the speed of light. It didn't carry explosives. It carried kinetic energy. It struck the Queen's central mass. The impact was blinding. The kinetic transfer liquefied the Queen instantly. The asteroid she was clinging to shattered. The shockwave cleared the nebula for hundreds of kilometers. "Splash 1 Queen," the officer reported. "Scourge cohesion breaking down, the swarm is dispersing." Lyra slumped in her chair, exhausted. "It is over," she whispered. "The battle is over," Vance corrected. "The war is just starting, but we bought you some time." The return to Kale was a triumph. The Scourge ships, leaderless and confused, were easily mopped up by Kalen's forces or drifted aimlessly into deep space. The pale horse docked again, and this time Vance was greeted not with fear, but with reverence. But the mood in the Synod was somber. The revelation of the Star Harvester hung over them. Vrax looked at Vance. "You said you would deal with the Harvester. How, if it is a Type III civilization?" "We have methods," Vance said evasively. "But we can't do it alone. The Pact of Silence wasn't just about us coming to save you. It was about waking up the galaxy. We've been sleeping, hiding, building our strength, but we can't hide anymore. The Harvester knows we're here now." He looked around the room at the Kael'thas, the delegates, the survivors. "You have good ships, Counselor, fast engines, good plasma tech. We have heavy armor and big guns, and we have the map." "The map?" Kalen asked. "The map to the source," Vance said. "The Harvester isn't a ship, it's a machine TH. It eats stars to prevent entropy. It thinks it's saving the universe by freezing it. We disagree. We think the universe is meant to be messy, to be loud, to be alive." Vance walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. "We are going to hunt it down. The pale horse will lead, but we need a fleet. A real fleet, not to fight, but to witness, to occupy, to rebuild." He turned back to Vrax. "The Kael'tha's hegemony is dead, Counselor. The Scourge killed it. What rises from the ashes has to be something else. An alliance. Will you join us? Or will you stay here and wait for the lights to go out?" Vrax looked at Kalen. The general nodded slowly. He looked at Lyra. She was smiling for the first time in cycles. "We will join you," Vrax said. "We will follow the pale horse." "Good," Vance grunted. "Then get your engineers ready. We're going to upgrade your shields, and you're going to teach us how to make that coffee of yours. Our synthesizers are crap." As the delegates began to talk, planning the logistics of the new alliance, the fear was gone, replaced by purpose. The humans were strange, terrifying, and dangerously powerful. But they were also calm. They were logical, and most importantly, they were angry at the dying of the light. Late that night, Lyra found Vance on the observation deck of the Pale Horse. He was looking at a datapad, an image of a blue and green world on the screen. "Is that Earth?" she asked softly. Vance looked up. "Was," he said. "Earth is gone. The Harvesters got it 500 years ago. That's why we fight. That's why we are dangerous, Lyra. We have nothing left to lose. We are the ghosts of a dead world refusing to go to the grave. Lyra looked at the massive, scarred ship around her. She understood now. The Pale Horse wasn't a warship. It was a tombstone, a monument, and a promise. "We will help you find them," Lyra said, placing a clawed hand on his arm. "We will help you avenge it." Vance looked at her hand, then at the stars. A faint smile touched his lips. "Avenging is for the past," he said. "We're fighting for the future, for your future. Don't make us regret it." "We won't," she promised. "Good," Vance said. "Now get to your station. We've picked up a signal, a big one. The harvester is moving, and I want to be there when it arrives." The Pale Horse hummed, a sound of deep, resonant power. It was no longer a silent monolith. It was a beacon of its own, a signal fire in the dark, warning the monsters of the void that the children of Earth were awake, and they had brought their most dangerous ship. And they were very, very prepared for battle. The fleet formed up, Kael'tha's cruisers, frigate wings, and the massive gray wedge of the human dreadnought at the lead. Vrax watched from the spire of the Synod as they broke orbit, a river of light flowing into the dark. He felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't hope exactly. It was something harder, something colder. It was resolve. The pact was fulfilled. The silence was broken, and the galaxy would never be quiet again.